The autumn sky flashed with lightning, illuminating Katherine Vaughn's desperate race against the approaching storm, her wheat blonde hair whipping wildly behind her as she urged her tired mare forward. Fort Bridger, Wyoming wasn't visible yet through the darkening prairie, but she knew she was close to the homestead that represented everything she had left in the world after her father's passing 3 months prior. The year was 1875, and Catherine Kate, to those who knew her well, had traveled all the way from Boston after receiving the letter about her father's death. What was supposed to be a brief trip to settle his affairs had become complicated when she discovered the dire state of her inheritance. A small, struggling homestead on the edge of Wyoming territory, far from anything resembling the civilization she had known all her 23 years. "Come on, Penny," she urged her horse as the first heavy raindrops began to fall. "Just a little further." When the small cabin finally came into view, relief washed over her momentarily. That relief vanished as quickly as it had appeared when she noticed something wasn't right with the silhouette of her father's, now her home. Even through the gathering gloom, she could see that half the roof was already caved in. By the time Kate reached the homestead, the sky had opened up completely. She dismounted, her boots sinking into mud as she led Penny to the small lean-to that served as a stable. The poor animal was as exhausted as she was after their trip to Fort Bridger for supplies. Kate had spent nearly every cent she had on essentials, hoping to make it through her first winter in Wyoming before deciding whether to sell the property come spring. But as she approached the cabin, her heart sank completely. The damage was worse than she'd initially thought. The summer storms had been unkind in her week-long absence, and the partially collapsed roof her father had been meaning to fix had given way entirely on one side. Rain poured freely into what had been her bedroom, the rough-hewn bed now slick with water, the few personal belongings she'd unpacked thoroughly soaked. "No, no, no," she whispered, setting her supplies down in the one dry corner of the main room. She lit a lantern with shaking hands and surveyed the destruction. The weight of her situation pressed down on her chest until she could barely breathe. Kate managed to salvage what she could, moving her supplies and remaining dry bedding to the kitchen area, which still had its roof intact. She sat on a wooden chair, head in her hands, listening to the storm rage outside. What was she going to do? With winter approaching and no funds to hire help for repairs, this disaster might just force her hand. She would have to sell, and at a tremendous loss. The next morning brought clear skies but no relief from her predicament. Kate stepped outside, the hem of her dress instantly soaked by the dew-heavy grass, to assess the damage in proper light. It was, if anything, worse than she'd feared. The supporting beam had splintered, and the roof would need to be entirely rebuilt before the first snows, which could arrive any week now according to the shopkeeper in town. She was so absorbed in her troubles that she didn't notice the approaching rider until the sound of hoofbeats was nearly upon her. Kate turned, instinctively reaching for the small pistol her father had kept by the door, now tucked into the pocket of her skirt. The man who approached on a chestnut stallion was tall and broad-shouldered, his face partially obscured by his wide-brimmed hat. As he drew closer, Kate could see he was perhaps 30, with sun-weathered skin and observant hazel eyes that took in the damaged cabin before settling on her. "Morning, madam," he called, his voice deep but not unkind. "Looks like you've got yourself some trouble." Kate straightened her spine, her hand still hovering near her pocket. "I can manage, thank you." The man dismounted in one fluid motion, revealing his full height at least 6 inches taller than her own 5 feet and 5 inches. "Didn't mean to intrude. I'm Isaac Weston. I ranch about 3 miles west of here." He nodded toward the mountains. Rode by to check if anyone was hurt. That was quite a storm last night. Katherine Vaughn, she replied stiffly, reluctantly removing her hand from her pocket. And no, I wasn't hurt, just the cabin. Isaac Weston studied the damaged structure with a practiced eye. That's Thomas Vaughn's place, isn't it? I heard he'd passed. My condolences. He was my father, Kate said, surprised this stranger knew of her father. I've come from Boston to decide what to do with the property. Isaac nodded. Thomas was a good man, helped me when I was first setting up my ranch. He turned his attention back to the cabin. Begging your pardon, Miss Vaughn, but that roof won't make it through the first snow, let alone the winter. And Wyoming winters aren't kind to the unprepared. Kate felt a flush of embarrassment creep up her neck. I'm well aware of that, Mr. Weston. I'm considering my options. Do those options include rebuilding before winter sets in? He asked, his tone matter-of-fact rather than judgmental. I don't see how that's possible, Kate admitted after a moment. I don't have the funds to hire help, and I certainly can't do it myself. Isaac removed his hat, revealing thick, dark hair that curled slightly at the ends. I owed your father a debt I never got to repay, he said simply. I'd like to help if you'll allow it. Kate blinked in surprise. You want to help rebuild my roof? Why would you do that? Like I said, I owed Thomas. Besides, neighbors help neighbors out here. It's how we survive. He replaced his hat. I can bring some of my men tomorrow and we can get started. The weather should hold for a few days. Kate wanted to refuse. She'd spent her entire life being self-sufficient, and the idea of accepting charity from a stranger went against everything she believed in. But as another gust of wind sent a loose shingle clattering to the ground, she realized she had no choice. I can't pay you, she said bluntly. Isaac's lips quirked in what might have been a smile. Didn't ask for payment, Miss Vaughn, just being neighborly. He climbed back onto his horse. We'll be here at first light. Might want to clear out whatever you can from under that damaged section. Before Kate could formulate a proper response, he had tipped his hat and was riding away, leaving her standing in front of her broken home, uncertain whether to feel relieved or offended. True to his word, Isaac arrived the next morning just as the sun was beginning to paint the eastern sky with streaks of pink and gold. He wasn't alone. 3 other men rode with him, along with a wagon loaded with lumber, tools, and supplies. Kate had been awake for hours, having slept poorly on her makeshift bed in the kitchen corner. Morning, Miss Vaughn, Isaac called as he dismounted. Hope you don't mind the early start. Days are getting shorter. Kate emerged from the cabin, dressed in the most practical outfit. She owned a simple blue dress with a sturdy apron. Good morning, Mr. Weston. Gentlemen, she added, nodding to the other men who were already unloading supplies. This is Frank, Lewis, and Henry. Isaac introduced his ranch hands. Best workers in the territory. The men tipped their hats politely, though Kate could see the curiosity in their eyes. She knew what they must be thinking. What was a city woman doing out here all alone? I've prepared coffee, she offered, gesturing toward the cabin. It's the least I can do. Much appreciated, Isaac said, and the genuine smile he gave her was warm enough to momentarily distract Kate from her troubles. The men worked quickly, first removing the damaged sections of the roof and assessing the structural damage. Kate insisted on helping, gathering the fallen debris and bringing water when needed. By midday, the temperature had risen, and the men had shed their jackets, working in their shirt sleeves. Kate couldn't help but notice Isaac as he moved with confident efficiency, directing the others while doing more than his share of the heavy lifting. His forearms were tanned and muscular, testament to years of hard physical work. Your father built this place solid, Isaac commented during a brief break. The foundation and most of the walls are sound. It's just the roof and that one support beam that need replacing." "He built it himself?" Kate asked, surprised. She had known so little about her father's life after he and her mother had separated when Kate was just 10 years old. Isaac nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. "Thomas came out here about 12 years ago, built this place log by log. He was a determined man." Kate felt a pang of sadness. "We weren't close. My mother kept me in Boston after they separated. I only saw him a handful of times after that." "That's a shame," Isaac said simply. "He spoke of you often, was proud of your schooling." The revelation that her father had spoken about her to others caught Kate by surprise. Had he really been proud of her? The letters they'd exchanged over the years had been infrequent and formal, revealing little of his true feelings. By sunset, the men had made remarkable progress. The damaged beam had been replaced, and the framework for the new roof section was in place. They would need at least another full day, possibly 2, to complete the job. "We'll be back tomorrow," Isaac said as they packed up their tools. "Should have you weather tight by tomorrow evening if all goes well." "I don't know how to thank you," Kate said, standing awkwardly by the door as the men prepared to leave. "No need," Isaac replied. "Like I said, neighbors help neighbors." But as he mounted his horse and looked back at her one last time, Kate felt something shift between them, a moment of connection that transcended simple neighborly duty. That night, as Kate lay in her makeshift bed listening to the sounds of the prairie, she found herself thinking of Isaac Weston not just with gratitude, but with a curious, unexpected interest that she quickly tried to dismiss. She had no business developing any sort of attachment to Wyoming or its inhabitants. Come spring, she would sell this place and return to Boston, to the life and future she had always planned. Yet as she drifted off to sleep, it was Isaac's kind eyes and capable hands that filled her dreams, not the familiar streets of Boston she had expected to miss. The next day brought the men back as promised, and work resumed at the same brisk pace. Kate had risen early to prepare a proper breakfast for them, biscuits and gravy, with the last of her coffee. It wasn't much, but the appreciative looks on their tired faces made her feel useful for the first time since arriving in Wyoming. "This is mighty fine cooking, Miss Vaughn," Lewis said, helping himself to a second biscuit. "Thank you," Kate replied, surprised by how pleased the simple compliment made her feel. In Boston, her accomplishments had been measured in her musical abilities, her conversation skills, her knowledge of literature, not something as basic as cooking a meal. "Better than what the boss makes, that's for sure," Henry added with a grin, earning him a mock glare from Isaac. "My cooking keeps you alive, doesn't it?" Isaac countered good-naturedly. "Barely," Frank muttered, and all the men laughed, including Isaac. Kate found herself smiling too, caught up in their easy camaraderie. These men were nothing like the polished gentlemen of Boston society, with their rehearsed compliments and calculated attentions. There was something refreshingly straightforward about them, about Isaac in particular. The day progressed steadily, with the new roof taking shape under the men's skilled hands. Kate continued to help where she could, though she often felt more in the way than useful. Still, no one suggested she retire to more ladylike pursuits, which she appreciated. During a water break, Kate found herself standing beside Isaac, watching as Lewis and Henry expertly laid shingles on the newly constructed framework. "You have good men working for you," she observed. Isaac nodded. "They're the best. Been with me since I started the ranch 7 years ago." He took a long drink of water. "What about you, Miss Vaughn? What will you do once the cabin is repaired?" Kate sighed, considering the question she'd been asking herself for weeks. "I'm not sure. I came intending to settle my father's affairs and sell the property, but—" She gestured around at the vast landscape stretching out before them, There's something about this place that makes decisions difficult. Wyoming has that effect on people, Isaac said with a small smile. It gets under your skin. What brought you here? Kate asked, genuinely curious about this man who had so unexpectedly come to her rescue. Isaac was quiet for a moment, his gaze fixed on the distant mountains. Freedom, I suppose. After the war, I couldn't settle back into city life. Too confined. He glanced at her. I fought for the Union. Came west afterward like many did. And you've never regretted it. The isolation, the hardship, not once, he replied without hesitation. Out here, a man is judged by what he does, not where he came from or who his family is. There's honesty in that. Kate considered his words. In Boston, her every move had been circumscribed by expectations, her mother's, society's. Even her choice of suitors had been heavily influenced by considerations of family connections and social standing. I envy your certainty, she admitted. Isaac studied her face, his expression thoughtful. You might surprise yourself, Miss Vaughn. Wyoming has a way of revealing what people are truly made of. Before Kate could respond, they were interrupted by Frank calling for Isaac's help with a particularly heavy beam. The conversation ended, but Isaac's words lingered in Kate's mind throughout the afternoon. By the time the sun began to set, the roof was nearly complete. Only a small section remained to be shingled, which Isaac assured her they would finish first thing the following morning. One more day should do it, he said as the men packed up for the evening. Then you'll be snug for winter, should you choose to stay. Thank you, Kate said, standing on the porch as the men loaded their tools into the wagon. Would you all of you stay for supper tomorrow? Once the work is finished, it's the least I can offer in return. The invitation surprised even her. She hadn't planned it, but suddenly it seemed important to properly thank these men who had worked so hard on her behalf. Isaac looked pleased. We'd be honored, Miss Vaughn. As they rode away, Kate found herself already planning tomorrow's meal, mentally inventorying her limited supplies. She wanted to impress them to impress Isaac, and the realization made her pause. Why should his good opinion matter so much to her? That night, a gentle rain tested the new roof, and Kate lay awake listening for any sign of leaks. But the repair work held firm, and the only sound was the soft patter of raindrops on the solid roof above. For the first time since arriving in Wyoming, she felt truly safe. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, with a hint of frost on the ground, a reminder that winter was indeed approaching. Isaac and his men arrived as the sun cleared the horizon, and work resumed on the final section of the roof. By midday, the job was complete, and Kate's cabin stood whole again, its new roof gleaming in the autumn sunlight. It looks better than it did before the storm, Kate marveled, standing back to admire their work. Should last you many years, Isaac said, coming to stand beside her. We reinforced the structure while we were at it. Wyoming winters bring heavy snow. I don't know how I'll ever repay you, Kate said, turning to face him directly. Something in Isaac's expression softened. Having you here, bringing Thomas's place back to life. That's payment enough. He would have wanted that. The sincerity in his voice touched Kate deeply, and she found herself blinking back unexpected tears. I wish I'd known him better, she said quietly. Isaac nodded in understanding. He was a private man, but a good one. You have more in common with him than you might think. Kate was about to ask what he meant when Lewis called out, announcing that the last of the tools had been packed away. The moment passed, and Kate busied herself with preparations for the promised supper. The meal was a simple affair by Boston standards: rabbit stew, cornbread, and preserved peaches that Kate had found in her father's root cellar. But to judge by the men's reactions, it might have been a feast at the finest restaurant. "Miss Vaughn, this stew is delicious," Frank said, helping himself to a second serving. "Indeed it is," Isaac agreed, his eyes meeting hers across the table. "You have hidden talents, Miss Vaughn." Kate felt herself blush at his compliment. "Hardly hidden. In fact, my mother would be mortified to know I was taking pride in something as domestic as cooking. She always insisted such tasks were beneath a lady of good breeding." "No honest work is beneath anyone," Isaac said firmly. "Out here, those who can't adapt don't survive long." The conversation flowed easily after that, with the men sharing stories of ranch life and local happenings. Kate found herself laughing more than she had in months, drawn into their tales of cattle drives and frontier misadventures. As the evening wore on, Lewis produced a harmonica from his pocket and began to play a lively tune. Henry and Frank cleared a space on the floor and demonstrated what they called a proper Wyoming dance, their boots stomping in rhythm to the music. "May I?" Isaac asked, extending his hand to Kate. She hesitated only briefly before accepting, allowing him to lead her into the makeshift dance floor. Isaac's hand was warm at her waist, his touch respectful but firm as he guided her through steps she didn't know but somehow followed anyway. "I'm afraid I'm not familiar with this dance," she admitted, stumbling slightly. Isaac steadied her with a gentle squeeze of his hand. "You're doing fine. It's not so different from your Boston dances, just a bit more." He spun her unexpectedly, spontaneous. Kate laughed as she twirled back into his arms, her skirt swirling around her ankles. In that moment, Boston seemed very far away indeed. Later, after the men had departed and Kate was alone in her newly repaired cabin, she sat by the fire, reflecting on the strange turn her life had taken. 3 months ago, she had been Katherine Vaughn of Beacon Hill, with a predictable future ahead of her marriage to a suitable gentleman, a comfortable home, children raised with all the advantages her own privileged upbringing had afforded her. Now, here she was in a remote cabin on the Wyoming frontier, with winter approaching and decisions to make. Should she stay and try to work her father's land, as he would have wanted, or sell the property as soon as possible and return to the world she knew? And then there was Isaac Weston, a man unlike any she had ever known. His kindness had been unexpected, his strength impressive. But what unsettled her most was the way he looked at her not as a delicate flower to be protected or a prize to be won, but as a person of substance, capable of facing the challenges this harsh land presented. Kate rose and moved to the window, gazing out at the vast, star-filled sky. Boston had never offered a view like this, she thought. Perhaps there were other things it had never offered as well. The weeks that followed brought a steady progression toward winter. Kate found herself busier than she had ever been, preparing the cabin and learning the basics of survival that her father's journals discovered in a trunk beneath his bed outlined in meticulous detail. Isaac stopped by periodically to check on her progress, always with some practical gift: a sack of flour, a smoked ham, a load of firewood. Each time he stayed a little longer and their conversations grew deeper, more personal. Kate learned that Isaac had come from Pennsylvania originally, that he had fought at Gettysburg, that he had lost a younger brother in the war. In turn, she told him about her mother's rigid expectations, her own quiet rebellion in pursuing an education beyond what was considered necessary for a woman, and her conflicted feelings about her father's absence from her life. "He wanted to bring you west," Isaac told her one evening as they sat on her porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "He talked about it sometimes, how he'd written to you about joining him here." Kate frowned. "I never received any such invitation." Isaac gave her a sidelong glance. "Perhaps the letters didn't reach you." The implication hung in the air between them. Had her mother intercepted her father's letters? It seemed entirely possible, given Katherine Vaughn's determination to keep her daughter firmly ensconced in proper Boston society. The thought troubled Kate deeply. What else might she have missed because of her mother's interference? "I've been reading his journals," she said after a moment. "He kept detailed records of everything: weather patterns, crop yields, wildlife sightings. He loved this land." "That he did," Isaac agreed. "Will you stay through winter then?" The question had been hovering unspoken between them for weeks. "I'm considering it," Kate admitted. "It seems wrong somehow to leave without truly understanding what he built here." Isaac nodded, his expression carefully neutral, though Kate thought she detected a flash of pleasure in his eyes. "Winter will be a harsh teacher, but you strike me as a quick learner, Miss Vaughn." "Kate," she said impulsively. "If we're to be neighbors through a Wyoming winter, I think you might call me Kate." A slow smile spread across Isaac's face. "Kate it is, then, and I'm Isaac to my friends." "Are we friends, Isaac?" she asked, surprised by her own boldness. His gaze held her steadily. "I'd like to think we're becoming so." The first snow came in early November, transforming the landscape overnight into a glittering white expanse. Kate woke to find the world outside her window changed. The familiar contours of the land softened and made new by the pristine blanket of white. Her repaired roof held beautifully, keeping the interior warm and dry despite the snow that continued to fall throughout the day. Kate stood at the window, watching the flakes swirl and dance in the wind, feeling a strange mixture of excitement and apprehension. This was her first Wyoming winter, and everything she had heard suggested it would test her in ways she could scarcely imagine. By mid-afternoon, the snow had stopped, but the sky remained heavy with the promise of more to come. Kate was about to stoke the fire when she heard the now familiar sound of hoofbeats approaching. Looking out, she saw Isaac making his way carefully along the path to her cabin, his horse picking its way through the fresh snow. Kate hurried to the door, an inexplicable warmth flooding through her at the sight of him. "Isaac, what are you doing out in this weather?" He dismounted, brushing snow from his coat. "Checking on my neighbors as any sensible rancher would after the first snow." His eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled at her. "How's the roof holding up?" "Perfectly," Kate assured him, stepping back to allow him entry. "Not a single leak. Your work was exemplary." Isaac stamped the snow from his boots before entering, removing his hat as he crossed the threshold. "Glad to hear it. First snow is always the test." He glanced around the cabin, nodding approvingly at the well-stocked woodpile by the hearth and the shelves lined with preserved foods. "You've been busy," he observed. Kate nodded, suddenly eager for his approval. "I've been following my father's advice from his journals. He was very specific about winter preparations." "Thomas was nothing if not thorough," Isaac agreed, warming his hands by the fire. "You've done well, Kate, better than many who have lived here their whole lives." His praise sent a flush of pleasure through her. "Would you stay for supper?" she asked. "It's the least I can offer after you rode all this way." "I'd be honored," Isaac replied, and there was something in his voice, a warmth that matched the fire's glow that made Kate's heart beat a little faster. The meal was simple but satisfying venison stew that Kate had learned to prepare from her father's notes, with biscuits and honey. They ate by firelight, the lanterns conserved for true necessity as the winter stretched ahead. "You've adapted remarkably well," Isaac commented as they finished their meal. "Many city folk find the transition more challenging." Kate smiled, setting her spoon down. "Don't be too impressed." "I still jump at every unfamiliar sound, and I nearly shot a raccoon yesterday thinking it was some kind of mountain lion." Isaac laughed, the sound rich and warm in the quiet cabin. "Well, Raccoons can be fearsome in their own way. Their conversation continued as the fire burned low, neither seemingly in a hurry to end the evening. Isaac told her about his first winter in Wyoming, how he'd nearly frozen checking on his cattle during a blizzard, and how an old trapper had found him and taught him the proper way to prepare for the harsh conditions. "I was stubborn, thought I knew better than those who'd lived here for generations," he admitted. "Nearly cost me my life." "What made you stay after such a difficult beginning?" Kate asked. Isaac was quiet for a moment, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames. "There's a freedom here that can't be found back east. Room to breathe, to build something that's truly your own." He looked up at her. "And there's an honesty to the land. It doesn't pretend to be gentle or forgiving. You always know where you stand." Kate nodded, understanding his meaning more deeply than she might have just a few months ago. "I've been thinking about that a lot lately. In Boston, everything is shrouded. People say one thing while meaning another. Here, there's no room for such pretense." "Is that why you're considering staying?" Isaac asked, his voice careful, as if he was trying not to influence her answer. Kate considered the question. "Partly," she admitted, "but also because I feel closer to my father here than I ever did through his letters. It's as if by living on his land, working as he worked, I'm finally getting to know him." Isaac's expression softened. He would be proud, Kate, very proud. The intimacy of the moment hung between them, weighted with unspoken feelings. Kate found herself studying Isaac's face in the firelight, the strong line of his jaw, the tiny scar near his right eye, the way his dark hair curled slightly where it met his collar. He was handsome, yes, but it was more than that. There was a steadiness to him, a quiet strength that she found increasingly compelling. "It's getting late," Isaac said finally, breaking the moment. "I should head back before the temperature drops further." Kate walked him to the door, suddenly reluctant to see him go. "Thank you for checking on me. I'll come by again after the next snow," he promised, settling his hat on his head. He hesitated, then added, "If you need anything before then, anything at all, don't hesitate to send word." "I won't," Kate assured him, and was surprised to realize she meant it. The fierce independence that had characterized her first weeks in Wyoming had softened, replaced by an understanding that interdependence wasn't weakness but survival. As she watched him ride away, disappearing into the gathering dusk, Kate acknowledged the truth she had been avoiding. She was developing feelings for Isaac Weston, feelings that complicated her already uncertain future. The weeks of early winter passed in a rhythm of snow and clear days, each storm followed by brilliant sunshine that made the landscape sparkle like diamonds. True to his word, Isaac visited after each significant snowfall, sometimes bringing small gifts, coffee, which had become scarce in Kate's pantry, a book of poetry he thought she might enjoy, a pair of rabbit fur-lined gloves he had traded for with a passing trapper. Kate found herself looking forward to these visits with an eagerness that both thrilled and alarmed her. What was happening between them was undefined yet undeniable, a slow building connection that deepened with each conversation, each shared meal, each moment of companionable silence by her fire. December brought the harshest weather yet, a blizzard that raged for 3 days straight, howling around Kate's cabin like a living thing seeking entry. She stayed inside, rationing her firewood and food, reading by lantern light, and trying not to worry about Isaac and his men out at the ranch, tending to cattle in such brutal conditions. When the storm finally broke, the world outside was transformed drifts of snow taller than Kate herself, the familiar landscape rendered alien under its white burden. It was beautiful but daunting, and for the first time since the roof had been repaired, Kate felt truly isolated. It was on the second day after the blizzard that Kate realized she needed to check her small woodshed, which stood about 50 yards from the main cabin. Her indoor supply was running low, and with the temperature still bitterly cold, maintaining the fire was essential to survival. Bundling up in every warm garment she possessed, Kate ventured out into the snow. The path to the woodshed had disappeared completely, forcing her to wade through snow that reached above her knees in places. The going was exhausting, each step requiring significant effort. By the time she reached the woodshed, Kate was breathing hard, her legs aching from the exertion. She pushed open the door, relieved to find the interior still dry and the wood supply ample. She filled her arms with as much as she could carry, knowing she would need to make several trips to build up her indoor store again. It was on her second return trip, arms laden with logs, that disaster struck. A hidden patch of ice beneath the snow caused her foot to slip, sending her crashing down hard onto her side. The wood scattered, and a sharp pain lanced through her ankle as it twisted beneath her. Kate cried out, more from shock than pain initially, but as she tried to stand, the true extent of her injury became clear. Her ankle wouldn't bear her weight, sending waves of agony up her leg when she attempted to put pressure on it. "No, no, no," she muttered, gritting her teeth against the pain. She was still a good 30 yards from the cabin in bitter cold with no one expected to check on her for days. Panic threatened to overwhelm her, but Kate forced it down. Panic wouldn't get her back to the cabin. Crawling if necessary, dragging the injured leg behind her, she began the slow, painful journey back to shelter. The trip that had taken minutes on the way out now stretched interminably. Kate lost track of time as she focused solely on making progress, inch by agonizing inch. The cold seeped through her clothes, numbing her hands and face, but she pushed on, knowing that to stop meant certain death. When she finally reached the cabin steps, Kate was nearly delirious with pain and cold. Pulling herself up the 3 steps was perhaps the hardest thing she had ever done, each movement sending fresh waves of agony through her injured ankle. Once inside, she collapsed on the floor, too exhausted even to close the door properly. The fire had burned low during her absence, the cabin already cooling without fresh fuel. Kate knew she needed to tend to both the fire and her injury, but for a moment, she simply lay there, tears of pain and frustration tracking down her cold, reddened cheeks. "Get up," she told herself fiercely. "Get up now, or you won't get up at all." Summoning her last reserves of strength, Kate dragged herself to the hearth, adding kindling and then a log from her dwindling indoor supply. Once the fire was rekindled, she turned her attention to her ankle, which had swollen to nearly twice its normal size. Kate knew enough basic medicine to recognize that, while the ankle was badly sprained, it was likely not broken. Still, she would be unable to walk normally for days, perhaps weeks, a dangerous situation for someone alone in the wilderness with winter fully upon them. As night fell, Kate's situation grew more precarious. Her firewood would not last more than a day, perhaps 2 if she was extremely careful. The food situation was better. She had ample supplies stored inside but without heat. Even that advantage would mean little. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by pain and worry. By morning, Kate had made her decision. She would have to signal for help, and there was only one way to do that. Her father's rifle, which she had learned to use during her first weeks at the homestead, hung above the mantel. Kate retrieved it, along with the small box of ammunition stored in a nearby drawer. 3 shots in succession was the universal signal for distress in the territory, her father's journal had explained. Dragging herself to the door, Kate took a deep breath, aimed the rifle skyward, and fired. The report was deafening in the still winter air. She waited a count of 5, then fired again, and a third time after another short pause. The sound echoed across the snow-covered landscape, then faded to silence. Kate reloaded the rifle, knowing she would need to repeat the signal every hour until help came or until she ran out of ammunition. By midday, Kate had fired 3 more sets of distress signals, each followed by tense waiting. Her ankle throbbed relentlessly, and the fire was burning dangerously low. She had managed to drag herself around the cabin, collecting every scrap of burnable material, old newspapers, a broken chair, even some of her father's less important papers, but these would not last long. It was as the winter sun was beginning its early descent toward the horizon that Kate heard the faint but unmistakable sound of hoofbeats approaching. Relief flooded through her, so intense it brought fresh tears to her eyes. Moments later, Isaac's voice called out, "Kate, Kate, are you all right?" "Here," she shouted back, her voice cracking. "I'm here, Isaac." The door burst open and Isaac stood framed in the entrance, his face tight with concern. "Kate," he breathed, taking in her position on the floor, the visibly swollen ankle, the dying fire. In 3 long strides, he was kneeling beside her. "What happened?" he asked, his hands already gently examining her injury. Kate explained about the fall, her voice steadier now that help had arrived. Isaac listened intently, his expression growing more concerned as she described her painful journey back to the cabin. "You could have frozen to death out there," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I nearly did," Kate admitted. "And then I almost ran out of firewood, if you hadn't come." "But I did come," Isaac said firmly. "I always will, Kate." There was something in his voice, a promise that went beyond neighborly duty, that made Kate's heart stutter in her chest. Their eyes met, and for a moment, everything else faded away, the pain, the cold, the precariousness of her situation. All that existed was the warmth in Isaac's gaze and the answering warmth it kindled within her. The moment was broken when Isaac stood abruptly. "We need to get you warm and that ankle tended to properly." He moved to the fire, adding wood from a supply he must have brought with him. "And then we need to talk about what happens next." "What do you mean?" Kate asked, watching as he efficiently built up the fire. Isaac turned to face her, his expression resolute. "You can't stay here alone, not injured like this. The next storm could be days away or it could come tonight. Either way, you need help." "I can manage," Kate began, but Isaac cut her off with a shake of his head. "No, Kate. This isn't about your capability, which I have never doubted. It's about practicality. You physically cannot gather firewood or do other essential tasks with that injury." He knelt beside her again, his voice softening. "Please, let me help you." The sincerity in his eyes broke through the last of Kate's resistance. "What do you suggest?" she asked quietly. "2 options," Isaac replied. "Either I stay here with you until you're healed enough to manage on your own, or you come to the ranch where I can ensure you're properly cared for." Both options represented a level of dependence Kate had avoided her entire adult life. Yet she knew, Isaac was right, her situation was untenable as it stood. And deep down, beneath her pride and independence, there was a part of her that didn't want to be alone anymore, especially not with Isaac offering an alternative. "Your ranch has proper heating?" she asked, her capitulation implicit in the question. Relief flashed across Isaac's face. "Yes, and plenty of hands to keep it stocked with firewood. You'd have your own room, complete privacy, and the best care we can provide." Kate nodded slowly. "Then I accept your offer, Mr. Weston. It seems you're building me a new shelter after all." Isaac's smile was warm enough to rival the fire he'd just built. "Only until you're back on your feet, Miss Vaughn. Then you can decide what comes next." But as he carefully gathered her into his arms to carry her to his waiting wagon, Kate had the distinct feeling that what came next might be very different from anything she had previously imagined for her life. Isaac's ranch was larger and more established than Kate had envisioned. The main house, built of sturdy logs with a stone foundation, stood 2 stories tall, a mansion by Wyoming territory standards. Outbuildings, including a bunkhouse for the ranch hands, a barn, and various storage structures, formed a rough square around a central yard. As Isaac carried her from the wagon to the house, Kate caught glimpses of activity: men tending to horses, smoke rising from the bunkhouse chimney, a dog barking excitedly at their arrival. It was a working ranch in every sense, humming with purpose even in the depths of winter. The interior of the main house surprised Kate even more. While not luxurious by Eastern standards, it was comfortable and well appointed, with solid furniture, colorful woven rugs, and shelves lined with books, more books than Kate had seen since leaving Boston. "This is not what I expected," she admitted as Isaac carried her into what appeared to be a sitting room where a fire already blazed in a large stone fireplace. Isaac's lips quirked in a half-smile. "What did you expect? Dirt floors and buffalo hides for curtains?" Kate flushed. "No, of course not. It's just more civilized than you imagined," Isaac suggested, carefully setting her down on a comfortable sofa. "Many Easterners have a rather romantic notion of what life out here is like." "Clearly," Kate agreed, looking around with newfound appreciation. "Did you build all this yourself?" Isaac shook his head. "The original cabin, yes. But as the ranch grew, I hired men from town to expand it. I've been fortunate. The cattle business has been good to me." Before Kate could respond, a middle-aged woman appeared in the doorway, her round face creased with concern. "So this is our patient," she said, moving forward to examine Kate's ankle with practiced hands. "I'm Martha Hayes, Mr. Weston's housekeeper. Used to be a nurse during the war, so you're in good hands, miss." "Katherine Vaughn," Kate replied, wincing slightly as Martha gently prodded the swollen joint. "Thank you for taking me in like this. Any friend of Mr. Weston's is welcome here," Martha said, throwing a quick glance at Isaac that Kate couldn't quite interpret. "Now, this needs cold compresses first, then bandaging, and you'll need to stay off it entirely for at least a week, preferably 2. 2 weeks, Kate echoed, dismayed. "But my cabin, my supplies." "Already taken care of," Isaac assured her. "I sent Frank and Henry back to secure everything and bring what you might need. Your place will be waiting for you, good as new when you're healed." The thoroughness of his planning left Kate momentarily speechless. While she had been focused on the immediate crisis, Isaac had already thought several steps ahead, anticipating her concerns and addressing them. "Thank you," she said finally, the words inadequate for the gratitude she felt. Isaac nodded, his expression softening. "Rest now. Martha will take good care of you, and I'll check on you after I've seen to some ranch business." As he left, Martha began preparing cold compresses for Kate's ankle, chatting comfortably as she worked. "Mr. Weston was in quite a state when he heard those distress shots," she commented. "Never seen him saddle up so fast." Kate felt a flutter in her chest at the information. "He's been very kind to me since I arrived." Martha gave her a knowing look. "Mr. Weston is kind to everyone, miss, but I haven't seen him ride out in a blizzard's aftermath for just anyone before." The implication hung in the air between them, neither confirming nor denying what Martha was clearly suggesting. Instead, Kate asked about life at the ranch, and Martha was happy to oblige with stories of the early days when Isaac had first arrived with nothing but determination and a small herd of cattle. "He's built all this from nothing," Martha concluded proudly. "Most respected rancher in the county now, and not just for his success. Mr. Weston treats his men fairly, deals honestly with everyone. He's a good man." "Yes," Kate agreed softly. "I believe he is." The days that followed established a new rhythm to Kate's life. True to Martha's instructions, she remained largely confined to her room, a comfortable chamber on the ground floor that Isaac had converted from his study to spare her the difficulty of stairs. Books from Isaac's extensive library appeared regularly, along with delicious meals prepared by Martha, who turned out to be as skilled in the kitchen as she was at nursing. Isaac himself visited daily, sometimes briefly when ranch duties called, but often for longer periods in the evenings. They would sit by the fire, talking long into the night about everything and nothing: Kate's life in Boston, Isaac's dreams for the ranch, books they had both read, experiences that had shaped them. "I never expected to find someone out here who had read Emerson," Kate commented one evening a week into her stay. Isaac raised an eyebrow, amusement playing at the corners of his mouth. "Because cowboys can't appreciate philosophy," Kate flushed. "That's not what I meant. It's just surprising. I may have chosen a different life than the one laid out for me, but I didn't leave my education behind," Isaac said. "My father was a professor at a small college in Pennsylvania. Books were as essential as bread in our household." "You never mentioned that before," Kate said, surprised by this new insight into his background. Isaac shrugged. "Out here, a man is judged by what he does, not where he came from. I wanted to succeed or fail on my own merits, not my father's reputation." "And you've succeeded admirably," Kate observed, gesturing to the comfortable room around them. "In some ways," Isaac agreed. "But a man measures success differently as he grows older. Material comfort is well and good, but it's not everything." "What else matters?" Kate asked, genuinely curious. Isaac's gaze held hers steadily. "Legacy, connection, building something that will outlast you." He paused. "Having someone to share it with." The atmosphere between them shifted, charged with unspoken meaning. Kate felt her heartbeat quicken, aware that they were approaching a threshold neither had yet dared to cross. "And have you found that?" she asked softly. "Someone to share it with." Isaac's expression was contemplative, his eyes never leaving hers. "I thought I'd made my peace with solitude." And then a stubborn Boston woman with wheat blonde hair and fierce independence appeared on Thomas Vaughn's homestead, and suddenly peace became much harder to maintain. Kate's breath caught in her throat. "Isaac, you don't need to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I know your plans didn't include Wyoming or a rancher with dirt under his fingernails. I'm not asking for promises, Kate. I just wanted you to know that you've changed things for me." The honesty of his confession touched Kate deeply. No man in Boston had ever spoken to her with such straightforward sincerity, laying his feelings bare without games or manipulation. "My plans have been changing since the moment I stepped foot in this territory," Kate admitted. "And you've been a significant part of that change." It wasn't quite a declaration, but it was an acknowledgement of feelings developing, of possibilities unfolding. Isaac seemed to understand the significance of her words, for his expression lightened, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Then perhaps we should both remain open to where those changes might lead," he suggested. "Perhaps we should," Kate agreed, her own smile matching his. As December deepened toward Christmas, Kate's ankle improved steadily under Martha's care. Soon, she was able to move about with the aid of a crutch that Lewis had fashioned for her, exploring the main house and even venturing onto the covered porch on milder days. The ranch's preparations for Christmas surprised Kate with their enthusiasm and thoroughness. Martha baked constantly, filling the house with the scents of ginger, cinnamon, and molasses. The ranch hands constructed a massive pine tree in the main sitting room, which everyone helped decorate with handmade ornaments, strings of dried berries, and small candles secured in special holders. "Christmas is important here," Isaac explained as he helped Kate hang a carved wooden star on the tree. "For many of the men, this is the only family they have. We try to make it special." Kate nodded, understanding. "My mother always hired decorators for our Boston home. Everything was perfect but impersonal." She gestured to the somewhat haphazard but clearly beloved decorations around them. "This is much better." Isaac's smile was warm. "I'm glad you think so." As Christmas Eve approached, Kate found herself wanting to contribute something meaningful to the celebration. Despite her still limited mobility, she convinced Martha to help her bake cookies, using her mother's prized recipe, one of the few positive associations Kate had with her childhood Christmases. The kitchen became a flurry of activity, with flour dusting every surface and the scent of butter and vanilla filling the air. Kate found herself laughing more freely than she had in years, the formal constraints of Boston society falling away in this warm, welcoming place. "Mr. Weston certainly seems cheerful these days," Martha commented as they worked, her tone casual but her eyes sharp. Kate focused intently on the dough she was rolling. "The holiday spirit, I imagine," Martha snorted softly. "If you say so, miss. Though we've had 7 Christmases here, and I've never seen him whistling while he does his accounts before." Kate couldn't help but smile at the image. "He whistles like a songbird," Martha confirmed. "Started right about the time a certain young lady took up residence here." The implication was clear, and Kate felt a blush creep up her neck. "Martha, no need to explain anything to me," the older woman interrupted kindly. "I've got eyes in my head. Just know that Mr. Weston is the finest man in the territory, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Christmas Eve dinner was a boisterous affair, with all the ranch hands joining Isaac, Kate, and Martha in the main house. The long dining table groaned under the weight of roasted meats, vegetables from the root cellar, fresh bread, and multiple pies. Wine flowed freely, and stories and laughter filled the room. Kate, seated at Isaac's right hand in a position of honor, found herself at the center of attention as the men peppered her with questions about the East, genuinely curious about the world beyond Wyoming. "Is it true ladies in Boston change clothes 3 times a day?" Henry asked, his expression incredulous. Kate laughed. "For some, yes. Morning dress, afternoon dress, evening dress, and each with its own accessories and rules." "Sounds exhausting," Frank commented, reaching for another slice of ham. "It is," Kate agreed, "and ultimately rather pointless. I much prefer the practicality of life here." She caught Isaac watching her as she said this, his expression thoughtful. Kate realized that she had meant every word. The artificial constraints of Boston society now seemed foreign to her, while the straightforward challenges of Wyoming life held an appeal she would never have anticipated months ago. After dinner, everyone gathered in the sitting room around the tree. To Kate's surprise, gifts were exchanged, small, often handmade items that clearly represented thought rather than expense. Martha received a new shawl knitted by one of the younger ranch hands. Lewis was given a beautifully carved pipe. Each man had something selected especially for him. Kate felt momentarily bereft, having nothing to offer until Martha slipped a small package into her hands. "From both of us," she whispered, nodding toward the cookies Kate had baked. "Those were gift enough." Touched, Kate distributed her cookies, warmed by the genuine appreciation shown by each recipient. When only Isaac remained, she hesitated, suddenly nervous. "I'm afraid I have nothing special for you," she admitted. "You've given me so much already: shelter, care, friendship." Isaac's expression was soft in the candlelight. "You being here is gift enough, Kate. He reached into his pocket, producing a small, carefully wrapped package. "But I do have something for you." Kate accepted the package with trembling fingers, unwrapping it to reveal a delicate silver locket on a fine chain. The craftsmanship was exquisite, with intricate engravings across its surface. "Isaac, it's beautiful," she breathed, opening the locket to find it empty. "But I can't possibly. It was my mother's," Isaac explained quietly. "She would have wanted you to have it. The inside is empty because, well, I thought you might want to choose what memories to preserve in it." The significance of the gift, a family heirloom, a piece of Isaac's past entrusted to her, brought tears to Kate's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," Isaac assured her, his voice gentle. "Just know that it's yours, whatever you decide come spring." The reference to her still undecided future hung between them, a question neither was quite ready to answer definitively. Yet as Isaac carefully fastened the locket around her neck, his fingers brushing lightly against her skin, Kate felt a certainty beginning to form in her heart, a certainty about where her future might lie, and with whom. The days following Christmas brought a period of peaceful routine to the ranch. The weather held relatively mild for Wyoming winter, allowing the men to tend to the cattle without undue hardship. Kate's ankle continued to improve, and soon she was able to move about with only a slight limp, no crutch required. "You'll be back to full strength before you know it," Martha declared after examining the ankle one morning in early January. "Mr. Weston will be sorry to see you go." "Will he?" Kate asked, unable to keep the question to herself. Martha gave her a knowing look. "He's not a man who shows his feelings easily, Miss Vaughn. But I've known Isaac Weston for 7 years, and I've never seen him as content as he's been these past weeks." The observation settled warmly in Kate's chest. She, too, had been happier at the ranch than she could remember being in years, perhaps ever. The sense of purpose that filled each day, the genuine connections she had formed with Martha and the ranch hands, and most of all, the deepening bond with Isaac, all combined to create a feeling of belonging she had never experienced in Boston. That evening, Isaac invited her to join him for a short walk, the first time Kate had ventured beyond the immediate vicinity of the house since her injury. Bundled in a warm coat, scarf, and gloves borrowed from Martha, Kate walked beside Isaac along a path he had cleared through the snow, leading to a small rise overlooking the ranch. "I come here often to think," Isaac explained as they reached the top, where a single bench faced west toward the distant mountains. Especially at sunset, Kate could see why. The view was spectacular, rolling white fields stretching toward purple mountains, the setting sun painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. The ranch buildings below looked small but sturdy, smoke curling from chimneys into the clear winter air. "It's beautiful," she said softly, accepting Isaac's help to sit on the bench. "I thought you might appreciate it," Isaac replied, settling beside her. "You've come to see the beauty in this land when many Easterners only see its harshness." Kate nodded, drawing her coat tighter against the chill. "When I first arrived, I saw only the challenges, the isolation, the difficult conditions, the endless work. But now I see what drew my father here, what keeps you here. There's a purity to this place, a honesty." "That's exactly it," Isaac agreed, his voice warm with appreciation for her understanding. "Life here strips away pretense. You face each day as it comes with its joys and hardships, and you know exactly where you stand." They sat in comfortable silence for a time, watching as the sun slipped below the horizon, the sky darkening to deep blue. The first stars appeared, brilliant points of light in the vast expanse above them. "Kate," Isaac said finally, turning to face her, "I know you came west with the intention of selling your father's property and returning to Boston. and I would never presume to influence that decision. But before you make your final choice, I want you to know that there's a place for you here if you want it." Kate's heart quickened at his words. "A place?" "Yes." Isaac took a deep breath as if gathering his courage. "At first I helped you because I owed your father a debt, then because it was the right thing to do, but somewhere along the way it became something else entirely." He reached for her hand, enveloping it in his larger one. "I've come to care for you, Kate, deeply. More than I thought possible after so short a time." The naked honesty in his voice moved her profoundly. This was not the carefully crafted declaration of a Boston suitor designed to impress or manipulate. This was simply truth, offered without expectation or demand. "I care for you too, Isaac," Kate replied softly. "These weeks at the ranch have shown me a different kind of life, one with meaning and purpose, surrounded by good people. By you." Hope flared in Isaac's eyes. "Then would you consider staying? Not just through winter, but beyond?" It was the question Kate had been asking herself with increasing frequency. Could she truly leave Boston behind, the only world she had known for this challenging but rewarding life? Could she build a future here with this man who had come to mean so much to her? "I'm considering it," she admitted. "More seriously each day. But Isaac, building a life here would mean letting go of everything I've known. It's not a decision to make lightly." Isaac nodded, his expression understanding. "I wouldn't want you to. All I ask is that you give us a fair chance." He squeezed her hand gently. "No decisions need to be made tonight. We have all winter." The tenderness in his voice wrapped around Kate like a protective embrace. In that moment, looking out over the land that Isaac loved so deeply, with his warm hand holding hers, Kate could almost see it, a future here at his side, facing each day's challenges and rewards together. "All winter," she agreed, returning the pressure of his hand. It wasn't a promise, not yet. But it was an opening, a possibility taking shape between them as tangible as the breath that fogged the cold air. January passed in a blur of snowy days and firelit evenings. Kate's ankle healed completely, allowing her to take on small tasks around the ranch house, helping Martha with meals, organizing Isaac's surprisingly extensive library, and even learning to knit under the housekeeper's patient tutelage. "Every ranch wife should know how to knit," Martha commented casually one afternoon as she demonstrated a particularly complicated stitch. "Winters are long, and men always need warm socks." Kate's fingers fumbled with the yarn at Martha's words. We're not." Martha's knowing smile stopped her stuttering. "Not yet, perhaps, but I've seen the way Mr. Weston looks at you when you're not watching, and the way you look at him, for that matter." Kate felt her cheeks warm. Was she so transparent? "It's complicated, Martha." "Love usually is," the older woman replied pragmatically. "But out here, complications have a way of sorting themselves out. Life's too short and too hard to waste time on unnecessary hesitation." The wisdom in Martha's words stayed with Kate that evening as she and Isaac sat playing chess by the fire, a nightly ritual they had established. Isaac was a skilled player, but Kate had been taught by her father during his infrequent visits to Boston and provided worthy competition. "Checkmate," Kate announced, moving her queen into position with a triumphant smile. Isaac surveyed the board with a rueful chuckle. "Well played. I should know better than to underestimate you by now." "Yes, you should," Kate agreed teasingly. "Though in fairness, I had an excellent teacher." "Your father," Kate nodded, a familiar pang of regret touching her heart. "During his visits east, it was one of the few ways we connected." Isaac began resetting the pieces, his movements careful and deliberate. "He spoke of you often, always with pride." "I think he regretted the distance between you, not just in miles." "So did I," Kate admitted softly. though I didn't realize how much until I came here and began to understand the life he built. She picked up the White Queen, turning it in her fingers. I've been reading more of his journals. He documented everything so meticulously: crop rotations, weather patterns, building techniques. It's as if he was creating a guide for someone. For you, Isaac suggested gently. Perhaps he always hoped you would come west someday, even if he couldn't bring himself to ask directly. The thought had occurred to Kate as well, especially after discovering letters to her that had never been sent, tucked between the pages of the most recent journal. Letters that spoke of his hope that she might visit, might see the beauty he had found in Wyoming, might understand why he had chosen this life. "I think you're right," she said. "And I wish I had come while he was still alive. We lost so much time." Isaac reached across the chessboard, covering her hand with his. "But you're here now, honoring his memory by walking the land he loved, reading his words, continuing what he started." The warmth of his touch and the understanding in his voice soothed the edges of Kate's regret. "Yes. And I'm grateful for that chance, at least." They finished resetting the board in companionable silence, but neither seemed inclined to begin another game. Instead, Isaac rose and moved to the window, looking out at the snow-covered landscape illuminated by a full moon. "It's a beautiful night," he observed, "clear and still. Perfect for a sleigh ride if you're interested." Kate looked up in surprise. "A sleigh ride, now?" Isaac nodded. "The ranch has a small sleigh we use for checking on outlying pastures when the snow is deep. But it serves equally well for pleasure rides on nights like this." His eyes held a hint of boyish enthusiasm that Kate found utterly charming. "What do you say? Are you adventurous enough for a moonlight ride?" The invitation was unexpected but irresistible. "I believe I am, Mr. Weston. Just give me a moment to get properly bundled up." 20 minutes later, muffled in every warm garment she could find, Kate sat beside Isaac in a small, well-built sleigh, a thick buffalo robe tucked around them both. A matched pair of black horses stood in harness, their breath forming clouds in the cold night air. "Ready?" Isaac asked, gathering the reins. Kate nodded, excitement bubbling through her. "Ready." With a gentle flick of the reins, Isaac set the horses in motion. The sleigh glided forward, runners hissing softly over the packed snow. They moved away from the ranch buildings, following a path that led through a stand of pines before opening onto a broad, moonlit meadow. The beauty of the scene took Kate's breath away. The full moon transformed the snow-covered landscape into a silver dreamscape, shadows of trees stretching long and blue across untouched white expanses. Above, the sky was a vault of deepest velvet, stars scattered like diamond dust across its surface. "Oh, Isaac," Kate breathed, "it's magical." "I thought you might appreciate it," he replied, his voice warm despite the cold air. "Some people only see the hardship of winter here, but on nights like this, I can't imagine being anywhere else." Kate understood completely. In this moment, with the sleigh gliding silently across the snow, the horses' harness bells creating a delicate music, and Isaac solid and warm beside her, she couldn't imagine being anywhere else either. They rode in comfortable silence for a time, following the contours of the land, occasionally passing through groves of trees where branches hung heavy with snow, creating natural archways above them. Isaac handled the horses with the same quiet confidence he brought to all tasks, and Kate felt utterly safe in his care. Eventually, they came to a small frozen pond, its surface a perfect mirror for the moon's glow. Isaac drew the horses to a halt at its edge. "We should turn back soon," he said regretfully. "But I wanted to show you this place first. In spring, it's full of wildflowers. By summer, deer come to drink at dusk. Every season, it has its own beauty. Even winter," Kate observed, taking in the pristine scene before them. Especially winter, Isaac agreed. He turned to look at her, his expression suddenly intent. Kate, I know we agreed to wait until spring for decisions, but Kate's heart quickened at the change in his tone. Yes. I find myself increasingly unwilling to imagine this ranch my life without you in it. The words came out in a rush, as if he had held them back too long. I know it's soon. I know you have a life waiting in Boston, but I love you, Kate Vaughn. I think I have since that first day, when you stood so proudly in front of your damaged cabin, refusing my help until practicality forced you to accept it. The declaration hung in the still winter air between them. Kate felt something shift inside her, a certainty settling into place where doubt had lingered. Isaac, she began, but he held up a hand. You don't need to answer now. I just needed you to know before you make any decisions about your future. But Kate already knew her answer. It had been forming in her heart for weeks, perhaps from the moment Isaac had first appeared to rebuild her roof, offering help without expectation of return. I love you too, she said simply. I think I've known it for some time, but I was afraid to admit it, even to myself. Loving you would mean choosing this life, this place permanently. Hope flared in Isaac's eyes. And could you choose this life? Kate looked around at the moonlit wilderness, so different from the crowded streets and drawing rooms of Boston. Then back at Isaac, his face open and honest in a way no Eastern gentleman's ever was. I already have, she realized aloud. Each day I've spent here, each challenge I've faced, each moment with you, I've been choosing this life all along. I just didn't recognize it. Isaac's smile was like the breaking of dawn. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned toward her. Kate met him halfway, their lips coming together in a kiss that, despite the cold air around them, filled her with warmth from head to toe. When they finally parted, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. Does this mean you'll stay, not just through winter, but always? Kate smiled, certain in a way she had never been about anything before. Yes, my father built a life here. Now I want to build one too with you. Isaac kissed her again, this one deeper, sealing their declaration with a promise that needed no words. When they finally turned the sleigh toward home, Kate felt as though she was truly heading home for the first time in her life, not to a place, but to a future, with the man she loved beside her. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet joy as Kate and Isaac began planning their shared future. With the mutual declaration of their feelings, a new ease developed between them, tender glances across rooms, hands seeking each other as they walked side by side, stolen kisses in moments of privacy. We should wait until spring for the wedding, Isaac suggested one evening as they sat together on the sofa, Kate's head resting against his shoulder as she read aloud from one of his favorite books. When the wildflowers are in bloom and travel is easier for any guests you might want to invite. Kate considered this, thinking of her mother and the few friends in Boston she might wish to have present. Yes, spring would be best, though I doubt my mother will approve of my choice, no matter the season. Isaac's arm tightened around her shoulders. Will that be difficult for you? Going against her wishes, it would have been once, Kate admitted. But I'm not the same person who arrived in Wyoming last autumn. I've discovered what truly matters to me, what kind of life I want to lead. She turned to look at him directly, and who I want to lead it with. The smile that spread across Isaac's face was worth any disapproval she might face from Boston society. Then spring it is. And in the meantime, we can start planning the improvements to your father's homestead. Kate sat up straighter, surprised. My father's homestead, I thought. I assumed I would live here at the ranch. Eventually, yes, if that's what you want, Isaac agreed. But I thought we might maintain your father's place as well. It's good land and it was important to him. We could expand it, perhaps use it for growing feed for the cattle. And it would remain in your name, your own property. The consideration behind the suggestion touched Kate deeply. Isaac wasn't asking her to simply fold herself into his existing life, but rather creating a new future that honored her past and preserved her independence. "I would like that," she said softly, "to keep my father's legacy alive while building something new together." February brought the harshest weather of the winter, a series of blizzards that confined everyone to the ranch buildings for days at a time. But inside the main house, warmth and happiness prevailed. Kate found herself seamlessly integrated into the rhythms of ranch life, helping Martha with household management, learning from Isaac about cattle raising and land stewardship, and even beginning to plan a garden for the coming spring. It was during one such blizzard, as howling wind rattled the windows and snow piled high against the walls of the house, that Kate found herself in Isaac's study, helping him organize his business ledgers. The task had revealed another side of her fiancé, a shrewd businessman whose careful planning and forward thinking had built the ranch into one of the most successful in the territory. "You have quite a head for figures," Isaac commented as Kate discovered and corrected an error in his calculations. "I may have to put you in charge of the accounts." Kate smiled, pleased by the compliment. "I always did enjoy mathematics, though it wasn't considered a particularly ladylike pursuit in Boston drawing rooms." "Their loss, our gain," Isaac replied, leaning back in his chair. "You know, with your education and my practical experience, we could expand the ranch considerably in the coming years." "I've been thinking about that," Kate admitted. "Your current cattle operation is successful, but there might be opportunities for diversification." "My father's journals mention the soil on his property being particularly good for certain crops." Isaac nodded encouragingly. "Go on." Warmed by his interest, Kate outlined ideas she'd been considering: adding crops to reduce dependence on purchased feed, possibly breeding horses as well as cattle, perhaps even establishing a small dairy operation once the nearest town grew large enough to support it. "Kate Vaughn," Isaac said when she had finished, his expression a mixture of pride and awe, "you are going to make the most remarkable rancher's wife this territory has ever seen." "Wife and partner," Kate corrected gently. Isaac's smile widened. "Wife and partner," he agreed, reaching across the desk to take her hand. "I couldn't ask for more." As February gave way to March, the first hints of spring began to appear: longer days, occasional thaws that revealed patches of ground beneath the snow, the return of birds from their winter migrations. Kate found herself watching eagerly for these signs, knowing that spring would bring not only her wedding but also the chance to begin implementing the plans she and Isaac had crafted together during the long winter evenings. It was during one such mild day in mid-March that Isaac suggested they ride out to check on Kate's homestead. The cabin had been secured after her injury, but no one had visited it since the worst of winter had set in. "Are you sure the trail is passable?" Kate asked, though she was eager to see her property again. "The main paths have been cleared enough for horses," Isaac assured her. "And I thought you might want to see it again, now that we've made so many plans involving it." The ride took longer than it would have in better conditions, but Kate didn't mind. Seated atop a gentle mare Isaac had selected especially for her, she reveled in the crisp air and strengthening sunshine, pointing out signs of approaching spring that only a few months ago she wouldn't have noticed: the swelling buds on tree branches, the particular quality of light reflecting off the remaining snow. When they finally crested the small rise that overlooked her father's, now her property, Kate reined in her horse, taking in the familiar sight with new eyes. The cabin stood solid and secure, its repaired roof still sound despite the winter storms. Around it, the land stretched white and clean, waiting for the touch of spring to reveal its full potential. "It looks smaller than I remembered," she commented as they approached. Isaac chuckled. "Everything does after a Wyoming winter spent mostly indoors." They dismounted, securing the horses to a post before approaching the cabin. Isaac produced a key, unlocking the door that had been secured months before when Kate had left for the ranch. Stepping inside was like stepping back in time. Everything remained exactly as they had left it, Kate's few possessions neatly stored, the furniture covered with cloths to protect it from dust. Her father's journals stacked carefully on the small desk. "It's strange," Kate said, moving slowly through the space that had briefly been her home. "I was only here for a short time, but coming back. It feels significant somehow." Isaac watched her from the doorway, his expression thoughtful. "This is where our story began, where I first saw you, standing so proudly despite the disaster that had befallen your roof." Kate smiled at the memory, which now seemed so distant. "I was determined not to need help from anyone, especially not a stranger who clearly thought I was in over my head." "Which you were," Isaac pointed out with a teasing smile. "Which I was," Kate agreed good-naturedly, "though I'd never have admitted it at the time." They moved through the cabin together, discussing improvements they might make, expanding the kitchen, adding a proper bedroom, perhaps eventually building a separate structure for storing crops. The plans flowed naturally between them, a shared vision taking shape for a future neither had imagined just months ago. As the afternoon light began to fade, they prepared to leave, securing the cabin once more against the remaining weeks of winter. Before mounting her horse, Kate took one last look at the small homestead. "When I first arrived here, I saw it as a burden," she said thoughtfully. "An unwanted inheritance that complicated my life. Now I see it as a gift from my father, from fate, from whatever force brought you to my door that day." Isaac moved to stand beside her, his arms slipping around her waist. "Thomas would be pleased to know his land will stay in the family, that what he built will continue to grow." Kate leaned into his embrace, feeling the solid strength of him against the chill of the late afternoon. "Our family," she said softly, testing the words and finding them perfect. "Our family," Isaac agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. The ride back to the ranch was taken at a leisurely pace, both of them reluctant to end their day of freedom before the demands of ranch life reclaimed their attention. As the buildings came into view, silhouetted against the setting sun, Kate was struck by how quickly this place had come to represent home to her. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Isaac asked, noticing her contemplative expression. Kate smiled. "I was just thinking about how strange life is. 6 months ago I was in Boston, certain of my path forward. Now I'm here, about to marry a rancher and build a life I never imagined." "Having second thoughts?" Isaac asked, his tone light though Kate detected a hint of genuine concern beneath it. She turned to him, making sure he could see the certainty in her eyes. "Not a single one. I've never been more sure of anything in my life." The weeks that followed passed in a flurry of wedding preparations. Kate wrote to her mother and a few close friends in Boston, inviting them to the ceremony planned for early May. Martha threw herself enthusiastically into planning the celebration, organizing the ranch hands to construct tables and benches for the feast that would follow the ceremony, and beginning the baking of cakes and pies that could be preserved until the big day. Isaac, meanwhile, surprised Kate with his own preparations. A bedroom in the ranch house that had been used for storage was cleared out and refurnished as a private sitting room for Kate, a space of her own where she could read, write letters, or simply enjoy moments of solitude. "Every woman needs a sanctuary," he explained as he showed her the room, newly fitted with bookshelves, a comfortable chair, and a small desk. Especially a woman who's agreed to share her life with a stubborn rancher and his endless responsibilities. The thoughtfulness of the gesture moved Kate deeply. "Isaac, it's perfect. How did you know exactly what I would want?" he smiled, pleased by her reaction. "I pay attention. I've seen how you treasure your quiet time with books, how you write in your journal each evening. I wanted you to have a space that was entirely yours, even as everything else becomes ours." Kate rose on tiptoes to kiss him, pouring her gratitude and love into the gesture. "Thank you for understanding me so well." April brought the true arrival of spring, the snow melting in earnest, revealing green shoots beneath, creeks swollen with runoff, and the first wildflowers dotting south-facing slopes. With the improved weather came increased activity on the ranch, as the cattle were moved to fresh pastures and preparations began for the calving season. Kate threw herself into the work, eager to learn every aspect of the operation that would soon be partly hers to manage. Isaac proved a patient teacher, explaining the reasoning behind each decision, introducing her to the complexities of cattle breeding, grazing rotation, and market timing. "You're a natural," he commented one evening as they reviewed the day's activities. "Most city folk take years to adapt to ranch life if they ever do." "I had a good incentive," Kate replied with a smile, "and an excellent teacher." As the wedding date approached, responses arrived from Boston. Kate's mother, as expected, declined to attend, her letter thinly veiling her disapproval of Kate's hasty and ill-considered alliance with a man of unknown background. The rejection stung, but less than Kate might have anticipated. Her life had changed so fundamentally that her mother's opinions, once so influential, now seemed oddly irrelevant. More surprising and gratifying were the acceptances from two of Kate's closest friends, Elizabeth Hartford and Mary Palmer, both of whom expressed delight at her happiness and curiosity about her new life. Their willingness to undertake the long journey west touched Kate deeply, providing a connection to her past even as she embraced her future. "Will it be strange for you?" Isaac asked when she shared the news. "Having your Boston friends see you in this new context?" Kate considered the question. "Perhaps a little, but I'm proud of the life we're building, Isaac. I want them to see it, to understand why I've chosen this path." The final weeks before the wedding passed in a blur of activity. Kate divided her time between helping with ranch duties, finalizing wedding plans with Martha, and making preparations at her homestead, which she and Isaac had decided to use for a brief honeymoon before returning to the main ranch. The cabin was thoroughly cleaned, minor repairs completed, and new furnishings added to make it comfortable for their stay. Isaac had insisted on handling most of these preparations himself, wanting Kate to have the pleasure of surprise when they arrived after the ceremony. The wedding day dawned clear and perfect, the kind of Wyoming spring morning that showcased the territory at its finest bright sunshine, a gentle breeze, and wildflowers blooming in riotous profusion across the meadows surrounding the ranch. Kate woke early, too excited to sleep despite the busy days leading up to this moment. She stood at her bedroom window, watching the sun rise over the distant mountains, feeling a profound sense of rightness about the day ahead and the life it represented. A soft knock at her door announced the arrival of Elizabeth and Mary, who had reached the ranch 2 days prior after their long journey from Boston. Both women entered with bright smiles, carrying a breakfast tray prepared by Martha and a small package wrapped in silver paper. "The bride needs her strength," Elizabeth declared, setting the tray on a small table, "and perhaps a touch of Boston tradition as well." "What's this?" Kate asked, taking the package Mary offered. Something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, Mary explained. We couldn't let you marry without observing at least some proper customs. Touched by their thoughtfulness, Kate unwrapped the package to find a delicate blue handkerchief embroidered with her new initials KW in silver thread. It's beautiful, she breathed, running her fingers over the fine stitching. That's the new and blue, Elizabeth said. For borrowed, we thought perhaps you might like to wear these. She produced a small velvet box containing a pair of pearl earrings Kate recognized as having belonged to Elizabeth's grandmother. And for old, Mary added, we brought this. From her pocket, she drew a small silver locket identical to the one Isaac had given Kate at Christmas. Kate gasped, looking from the locket to her friends in confusion. How did your Mr. Weston wrote to us, Elizabeth explained with a smile. He said he had given you his mother's locket, but thought you might like to have your father's as well the match to hers. Apparently, your parents had identical lockets made when they were first married. Tears filled Kate's eyes as she took the second locket, opening it to find a tiny portrait of her father inside, younger than she had ever known him, but unmistakably Thomas Vaughn. Isaac found this among your father's possessions, Mary continued. He thought today would be the perfect occasion to return it to you. The thoughtfulness of the gesture overwhelmed Kate. That Isaac had gone to such lengths, coordinating with her friends from Boston to provide this connection to her father on their wedding day, spoke volumes about the man she was about to marry. The remainder of the morning passed in a flurry of preparation. Kate bathed and dressed with the help of her friends, donning a simple but elegant gown of ivory silk that Martha had helped her alter from one of her Boston dresses. Her wheat blonde hair was arranged in a simple updo, adorned with fresh wildflowers gathered that morning. Around her neck hung both lockets her father's and her soon-to-be husband's mother's, symbolic of the joining of their pasts into a shared future. By midday, guests had begun to arrive, neighboring ranchers and their families, shopkeepers from Fort Bridger with whom Isaac did business, and the local preacher who would perform the ceremony. The ranch yard had been transformed, with benches arranged in rows facing a simple arch twined with early spring blooms. Kate waited in the house until Martha came to tell her all was ready. Then, taking a deep breath, she stepped outside into the bright Wyoming sunshine to begin her new life. Isaac stood waiting beneath the arch, tall and handsome in a new black suit, his dark hair neatly trimmed, his face clean-shaven for the occasion. But it was his expression that caught and held Kate's attention, the look of absolute wonder and love as he saw her for the first time that day. With no father to give her away, Kate had asked Frank, Isaac's foreman, and the man who had worked longest at his side, to escort her. As they walked slowly toward the arch, Kate felt a strange mixture of emotions: joy, certainty, a touch of wistfulness for her father's absence, but overwhelming all else, a deep and abiding love for the man waiting for her. The ceremony itself was brief and straightforward, in keeping with frontier practicality. The preacher spoke of the sanctity of marriage, the responsibilities of husband and wife, the commitment being made before God and community. Kate and Isaac exchanged simple vows they had written together, promises to support and cherish each other through whatever challenges and joys lay ahead. When Isaac slipped the gold band onto Kate's finger, a band he had secretly commissioned from a jeweler in Cheyenne, engraved inside with their initials and the date, Kate felt the last piece of her new life fall perfectly into place. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the preacher declared. "Mr. Weston, you may kiss your bride." Isaac's kiss was gentle but filled with promise, a perfect beginning to their married life. As they turned to face their friends and neighbors, now standing and applauding, Kate felt a surge of gratitude for the strange series of events that had brought her to this moment: her father's death, the storm that destroyed her roof, the arrival of a tall rancher offering help when she most needed it. The celebration that followed lasted well into the evening, a feast of roasted beef, fresh bread, spring vegetables, and Martha's legendary pies, accompanied by music from Lewis's harmonica and two neighboring ranchers who had brought fiddles. There was dancing under the stars, laughter, and the kind of genuine goodwill that Kate had rarely experienced in the more formal celebrations of her Boston life. As the party continued around them, Isaac drew Kate aside, leading her to a quiet spot where they could speak privately for a moment. "Happy, Mrs. Weston?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "Incredibly so, Mr. Weston," Kate replied, leaning into his embrace, "though it still feels strange to have a new name." "You can keep Vaughn if you prefer," Isaac offered immediately. "I wouldn't mind." The ready acceptance of her preference without hesitation or wounded pride confirmed yet again for Kate that she had chosen the right man. "No," she said softly. "I like being Katherine Weston. It represents the new life we're building together." Isaac smiled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Speaking of our new life, are you ready to see what I've prepared at your homestead? We can slip away whenever you'd like." The thought of finally being alone with her new husband sent a flutter of anticipation through Kate. "I think we've given our guests a proper celebration," she decided. "They won't mind if the bride and groom make an early departure." Their departure was met with knowing smiles and good-natured teasing from the ranch hands, but Kate found herself too happy to be embarrassed. Seated beside Isaac in the same sleigh that had carried them on their moonlit ride months, before now decorated with ribbons and flowers for the occasion, she felt a sense of perfect contentment as they made their way toward the homestead that had started their journey together. As they approached the cabin, Kate gasped in surprise. The building was illuminated with dozens of lanterns, casting a warm, welcoming glow into the gathering dusk. Flowers adorned the porch railings, and smoke curled invitingly from the chimney. "Isaac, it's magical," she breathed as he helped her from the sleigh. "Wait until you see inside," he replied, a hint of boyish excitement in his voice. "Close your eyes." Kate obeyed, allowing Isaac to lead her carefully up the steps and through the door. The scent of fresh pine and flowers greeted her, along with the warmth of a well-established fire. "Open them," Isaac whispered. Kate did, and what she saw brought tears to her eyes. The cabin had been transformed. New curtains hung at the windows. A colorful rug covered the previously bare floor, and the old furniture had been replaced with newer, more comfortable pieces. Fresh flowers adorned every surface, and the fire crackled cheerfully in a hearth that had been relaid with new stones. But most striking of all was the wall opposite the door, where Isaac had mounted a large, beautifully framed photograph of her father, alongside a smaller portrait of a handsome couple Kate didn't recognize. "My parents," Isaac explained, following her gaze. "I thought both our families should be present in a way as we begin our life together." The thoughtfulness of the gesture moved Kate deeply. "Isaac, it's perfect, all of it." "There's more," he said, taking her hand and leading her toward the back of the cabin where a new door had been added. Opening it, he revealed a bedroom that hadn't existed before, spacious by cabin standards, with a large, comfortable-looking bed, a small dressing table, and windows that would catch the morning sun. "You built this?" Kate asked in amazement, taking in the skilled craftsmanship evident in every detail. "With help," Isaac admitted. "The men and I worked on it whenever we could get away without you noticing. Do you like it?" In answer, Kate turned to her new husband, slipping her arms around his neck and drawing his head down for a kiss that expressed her gratitude and love far more eloquently than words could have done. Later, as they lay together in their new bed, the moonlight streaming through windows Isaac had positioned for exactly this view, Kate reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. "When that storm destroyed my roof, I thought it was the worst thing that could have happened," she murmured, her head resting on Isaac's chest, his heartbeat steady and reassuring beneath her ear. "Now I see it was the best." Isaac's arms tightened around her. "The best thing that ever happened to me was finding you standing in front of that damaged cabin, too proud to ask for help but needing it all the same." Kate smiled in the darkness. "We've come a long way since then." "And we have a long way yet to go," Isaac replied, his voice warm with promise. Together. As spring blossomed into summer, Kate and Isaac settled into their new life together, dividing their time between the main ranch and Kate's homestead, which they were gradually expanding with new outbuildings and fields of feed crops for the cattle. The work was hard but satisfying, each day bringing new challenges and rewards that they faced as a team. Kate's friends from Boston had returned east with glowing reports of her happiness and the beauty of her new home, helping to soften even her mother's disapproval. Katherine Vaughn had written a grudgingly conciliatory letter, hinting that she might consider a visit the following year, to see this wilderness that has so captivated my daughter. Life in Wyoming territory continued to test Kate in ways Boston never had, but she met each challenge with growing confidence, supported by Isaac's unwavering belief in her capabilities. Together, they expanded the ranch operations, improved breeding stock, and even began experimenting with new crops that Kate's research suggested might thrive in the local soil conditions. 1 year to the day after the storm that had destroyed Kate's roof, she and Isaac stood together on the porch of the main ranch house, watching another storm approach across the plains. This time, however, there was no fear in Kate's heart, only appreciation for the shelter they had built together, not just of logs and shingles, but of love, trust, and shared purpose. "Quite a storm brewing," Isaac observed, his arm around her waist. Kate agreed, leaning into his embrace. "But our roof will hold." Isaac smiled, understanding the deeper meaning in her words. "Yes, it will, this time and always." As the first raindrops began to fall, they turned and went inside together, closing the door on the gathering storm and entering the warm, secure home they had created, a shelter stronger than either could have built alone, designed to weather whatever life might bring their way.